This is StockX, a stock market for all kinds of things.
Smells good, ready to go.
You can buy or sell items like a pair of these Jordan 5 retro trophy room sneakers, this Supreme box logo hooded sweatshirt, an Hermes Birkin bag, an Himalayan crocodile, or a Rolex Oyster Perpetual watch. You can even find extremely rare Pokemon cards, like this Charizard-Holo 1999 Pokemon base set. In November 2018, StockX sold its most expensive item ever, a $70,000 trunk from Louis Vuitton and Supreme. StockX does about 20,000 sales of merchandise a day. And by June of 2019, the Detroit-based company reportedly reached a $1 billion valuation. Here's how StockX went from a simple price guide for sneakers to a reselling empire. This is Suddenly Obsessed. Meet Josh Luber,
This camera?
the co-founder of StockX.
I have the exact same story as every other 42-year-old sneakerhead. I grew up playing basketball when Jordan played. I always wanted Air Jordan, and so I literally have sneakers from when I was probably 8.
Before StockX, Luber had nothing to do with buying or selling sneakers. He ran 3 tech startups and joined the corporate world as a consultant at IBM in 2010.
I almost intentionally avoided creating any businesses that had to do anything with sneakers, almost out of fear of creating a business that was just an excuse to play with sneakers.
But while analyzing data at IBM, Luber realized eBay was the biggest marketplace for sneaker reselling.
eBay played a bigger role, but also it was really more up to the consumer to find the buyer.
But the problem with eBay was that each reseller would list different prices for the same product.
If you go to eBay and you search for the shoes I'm wearing Jordan 1 Royal, you'll get 1,000 listings. And you have to decide you buy from this person or that person. Why is this one 600? Why is that one 800?
Luber figured that the sneaker reselling market would benefit from following the stock exchange model, which means every stock listed on the exchange has one true market value. That system helps alleviate uncertainty.
You don't buy a share of Nike stock and then go home and your friend says, I got that cheaper on Amazon. No, there's one market price for that.
So in 2012, Luber started a side project called Campless, which was essentially a shoe reselling price guide for sneakerheads. Luber would scrape valuable data from eBay resellers and obtain all of the information about closed auctions for all sneakers sold on the platform. Slowly, Campless started gaining reputation and people started reaching out.
People started emailing and saying, hey, I love sneakers, I love data, can I help?
In fact, Luber had a volunteer team of 17 people. They were on the same mission: to make informed decisions before buying or selling expensive sneakers on the resale market.
I could look at someone's whole sneaker collection and I could say what their whole sneaker collection is worth. And then I could look at their sneaker collection the same way you look at a stock portfolio and just track its value over time. And then the logic is, well, if you understood asset pricing and you understand portfolio construction, then perhaps we could create an actual stock market for sneakers.
The only problem, someone with extremely deep pockets had a very similar idea. Enter Dan Gilbert. The Cleveland Cavaliers owner and billionaire investor's sons were also buying and selling sneakers through eBay. Gilbert saw an industry prime for disruption. So he put together a team to build a sneaker stock market. But it didn't take long before they discovered Campless. In April 2015, Luber took a call from Gilbert's team. They wanted him to fly to Cleveland on short notice to meet Gilbert on his home court. 4 days later on Easter Sunday, Luber met Gilbert for a Cavs game, and Luber wore his Tiffany Dunks.
We get there and we kind of make small talk before the game, and then after the game we go back in this private room, and that's where we realized that we were both trying to build a sneaker stock market. That actually led to them kidnapping me and taking me to Detroit for the next 2 days.
Luber left IBM in May 2015. 1 month later, Gilbert invested in Campless for an undisclosed amount. StockX was launched in February 2016.
And so it was a pretty crazy, serendipitous, happening. The fact that there was maybe one other guy in the whole world that had the exact same idea at the exact same time, and it happens to be, one of the most successful business people in the world.
StockX retained the real-time shoe pricing and analytics that made Campless a crowd favorite among sneakerheads and added an online marketplace.
Since the existence of StockX, I've sold $67,000.
Since then, I've done about $170,000 in sales.
Here's how StockX works. StockX acts like a middleman between buyers and sellers. Buyers place bids and sellers post asks. Both the buyer and the seller are completely anonymous throughout the entire transaction. Sellers don't have to upload photos or write product descriptions. Once the seller accepts an offer, the seller ships the product to StockX. StockX authenticates the item and releases the money to the seller. Then, StockX ships the item to the buyer. StockX charges a 3% payment processing fee and a transaction fee of up to 14.5%. The more someone sells on StockX, the lower the transaction fee. But the biggest beneficiaries of StockX may be the buyers. If someone is going to spend $600 on a pair of sneakers, they shouldn't have to worry about buying a fake.
From day one, we authenticated every product at StockX, and that was always going to be the case. And so if you're a 15-year-old kid and you're spending up all your money and saving up all your money to buy a pair of Yeezys, you know you're never going to get a fake pair of Yeezys. Massive amount of value there.
But it wasn't until the release of the Air Jordan 1 Bred on September 3rd, 2016, that they realized just how big the market was for a company like StockX.
We did about 300 sales that day, and we'd only been doing about 50 or 60 a day up until that point. And that's when we knew that the model was better, right? It was just watching trades come off the board and watching the spread close down to dollars at a time. We're like, wow, I think this is really gonna work.
The company has raised a total of $160 million from an impressive roster of outside investors, from Eminem and Mark Wahlberg to former Victoria's Secret model Karlie Kloss.
StockX announcing their most recent Series C funding round, where they raised over $100 million, which officially values their company at $1 billion.
But to understand how StockX grew so rapidly in such a crowded market, we need to look at the evolution of the sneaker resale industry over the past few decades.
We actually should go back to the 70s.
That's Elizabeth Semmelhack, creative director and senior curator at the Bata Shoe Museum.
In locations, specifically within New York City and its boroughs, as sneakers began to become associated with ideas of expressing individuality through fashion consumption, particularly in relation to breaking and hip-hop,
a new word entered the pop culture lexicon: dead stock.
One of the things that early sneakerheads, if you want to call them that, began to do was to go and try to find dead stock. And so dead stock are things that sit on somebody's shelves, maybe in a back room somewhere, that just never sold, that are overstocked. And it was in looking at shoe retailers who had dead stock and finding these rare shoes and then breaking them out that I think created the first steps towards wanting to have the rare and unique finds.
And it was around that time when some of the first big sneaker collaborations and releases happened. In 1984, the first pair of Nike Air Jordans was released. In 1986, Adidas partnered with the hip-hop group Run DMC. In 1989, Reebok launched the Pump sneaker for a whopping $170.
All of these ideas of fashion, masculinity, basketball, hip-hop, and price point come together in the mid-'80s.
In 1995, eBay was born, and it didn't take long for sneakerheads to start selling hard-to-find shoes on the site.
All of a sudden, now there's a platform by which people can begin to do this exchange in earnest, and dollar amounts could be assigned to sneakers.
While eBay created a place for consumers to buy and sell items, the rise of social media put the resale market on steroids.
The sneaker community was almost like a dark place, like it was a niche market before Instagram, because now you start to see everyone wear shoes. The richest of the rich and, people who are still trying to get by and make a living, they're wearing the same things. And I think that Instagram brought all of that together.
Apps like Instagram and Facebook allowed users to not only show off their collections, but to buy and sell their products directly with each other.
Hi CNBC, we're the Chicks with Kicks, and come take a look at the largest sneaker collection.
Ariana, Dresden, and Dakota Peters are the sisters behind a more than 6,000 pair sneaker collection. They inherited nearly 5,000 pairs of sneakers from their father, Douglas Roy Peters. These Chicks with Kicks have been selling some of their sneakers through Instagram. They've made more than $250,000 in sales so far.
Instagram is so easy and you don't pay fees, so there's really no reason to look elsewhere. For the everyday buyer of one pair or the seller of a few pairs, Instagram probably wouldn't be fit for them. And that's where StockX and those types of companies come in, because they're safeguarded and you're safe.
Selling went from niche to mainstream, which meant some enterprising people started making good money peddling hard-to-get items. And when there's money involved, you can count on someone gaming the system.
That was the hardest part about being able to deal sneakers. It was like you were so scared to get a fake pair of shoes that sometimes you just stayed away from it.
Luber says StockX addressed 3 things that were missing in the sneaker resale market: structure, transparency, and most importantly, authenticity. In fact, a robust authentication process was put in place at the company's launch. The challenge is finding authenticators who are able to consistently spot fakes. The higher the price of an item, the better the counterfeit.
We couldn't go to LinkedIn and find sneaker authenticator. That job didn't exist. We had to build it. We had to create that job. We had to create that process.
So StockX bought a bunch of real and fake shoes and dissected them, documented the differences, and created training manuals. The company even developed a proprietary technology process and established difficulty levels.
The Balenciaga, there's a lot of fakes and it's very hard to authenticate it. So when I catch a fake, I get happy and I just scream, fake!
Authenticators have to go through a 90-day training program to ensure that they can review any sneaker that comes through the door.
I've done over 600, 700 transactions, selling and buying. So, my experience has been absolutely great.
Today, StockX has 6 authentication centers and it employs over 100 authenticators around the world. And now that the company is also selling streetwear, handbags, watches, and collectibles, the authentication process has become even more critical to its ongoing success. But as the reselling market keeps growing, maintaining a rigorous authentication process is proving to be a challenge for all players in the resale space. In November of 2019, a CNBC investigation found that The RealReal, the world's largest online marketplace for luxury items and one of StockX's competitors, had used copywriters and not so-called experts to authenticate numerous items, and had also sold counterfeit merchandise. The company has stood by its authentication process.
Transparency is going to be very important. You see, The RealReal has had some trouble with that. They stand behind their authentication process, but it's bringing to light to consumers potential issues there. So retailers really need to give consumers insight into that authentication process to, make sure that they're comfortable with what they're getting.
The current overall resale market is about a $24 billion industry. And in 2019, the sneaker resale market alone was estimated to be worth over $2 billion in the US. With that much money on the line, big players and traditional retailers are investing heavily in online reseller marketplaces.
Bigger players and traditional retailers are investing in resale. If you think about Foot Locker's investment in GOAT, Neiman Marcus's investment in Fashion File, Farfetch's purchase outright of Stadium Goods, really, they feel this is important and this is the direction they should be moving because this is where there's growth coming.
Even eBay is trying to regain its place as a destination for sneaker resellers. In December 2019, eBay announced that it would be eliminating North American selling fees on any sneaker sold at $100 or more, creating a ripple throughout the industry. In fact, the lines between resale and retail are beginning to blur. In October 2019, StockX teamed up with Adidas to create 3 exclusive pairs of Adidas Campus 80s, releasing a total of 999 pairs on the platform. And in December 2019, eBay partnered with Stadium Goods to launch its own series of sneaker drops. StockX owes its success to the popularity of American companies like Nike and Supreme, but its fastest growing market is actually Europe. In fact, almost a quarter of StockX business is happening outside of the US. That's why it opened a 35,000 square foot authentication center in Eindhoven, Netherlands in August 2019. StockX CEO Scott Cutler says that at some point the company will explore going public. But Luber wants to take his stock market of things concept even further.
Retail pricing is completely antiquated. There's no reason to create an arbitrary number to attach to a pair of sneakers. When the Jordan 1 Travis Scott dropped, they retail for $175, but were immediately reselling for $1,500. Like, that just doesn't make sense at all. If you have variable pricing, if you can be able to put products into the market at a true market value, then that shoe maybe goes in the market at $700 or $800 or something way more than $175, but probably less than $1,500.
Luber says the ultimate goal is for brands to release products directly on StockX, moving the company from middleman to primary seller. The idea would be for StockX's customers to set the true value of a product at the onset.
And that's really the future of StockX, and to be somewhat cliche, probably the future of all e-commerce, which is for certain products, not all products, but for certain products that are supply and demand constrained, to let the market set the price, to literally IPO those products into existence and get rid of retail pricing for them.
StockX's rise isn't that hard to understand. The company is simply copying the rules of the stock market and the way it understands value.
On to the next.